sort of reiterate the purpose of today. So this is really a Q&A for the benefit of you guys. A lot of the sorts of information that tends to be provided is all very much about how to help children. And I think a big area that doesn't get covered enough is the experience that we go through as parents and what sort of support would be helpful for us. You know, what are the things that we can do that can help our experience of parental alienation? Because there is a lot. Right then, I am in your hands, guys. What would you like to ask me? That happens a lot, by the way. That that
Right.
that that I mean, the good thing is she hasn't blocked you, so she's keeping a door open. But very very often, what happens with our kids is that they will receive a text, but they won't answer, and it's like there's an invisible line that they cross. That if they can't stop you from sending it, but if they respond, that's like they're now going against, the alienating parent, and they feel in their heads they can get into trouble for that. I would keep on texting. Just never say you miss her, by the way. That guilt trips the kids. Just say you love them, and always just keep it really, really light. I think a big surprise for any parent who's not seen their child for a period of time is the difference that the child has gone through, because you're dealing with a different person at this point in time. Especially if it's been 3 or 4 years, they've got older, they've got a lot more experience under their belt, especially if at that sort of age.
Mm,
Um, and we sometimes imagine that it's going to be back to how it was at the point in time that we lost contact with the kid.
yeah.
And so we have to be very aware of the fact that we just have to work with whatever it is we're presented with, but also um, what our kids don't want us to do is talk about alienation. And they also, if we, the fact that she took the call was very positive. That that was a good thing. Uh, we have to be really prepared for when we re-engage with kids we haven't spoken to for in a while. And there's two key aspects to that. The first one is go and get sort of up to speed, be knowledgeable about or rather how parental alienation affects children. So some great resources out there. This is one of the things I help parents with a lot as well. It's in helping the parent to put themselves in the shoes of the child and try to imagine as best you can, what the kid's been through, the loyalty conflict that they've gone through, how in
Yeah.
they might be. They might have gone through cognitive dissonance and they've already split from us. So they've already been through several experiences that we can kind of get an understanding of what that must be like for them. So
Yeah.
understanding alienation is one half of it. The other half is us, because we don't give enough, and this is the whole purpose of this evening as well. We don't spend enough attention on how we are as a parent. Because whilst we are looking at our child is looking to us, and they're saying, is dad or is mum healed? Are they in a good space? So there are certain things we shouldn't do. And this stuff is so counterintuitive. And there's so little kind of training on this almost for parents. But from our perspective, we want to be as healed as possible so that when we do have contact with them, we're not being triggered by things that they say,
Mm,
that we're not going to react inappropriately, because what's happening with our kids is to rebuild a relationship, you're actually rebuilding trust. And it's a very simple little word, but it's so important because for your daughter, for instance, what she might have hoped for is that she could start having a conversation with you and that you were just going to love her and support her because that's all they want. But when they have a conversation with us and they maybe talk about something that they think we've done wrong and we defend ourselves, the message we give our kids is, I'm not healed. I'm not ready to have this relationship with you yet. And what we do is we inadvertently push them away. And the degree to which we are triggered can be so subtle. It can be we change our tone of voice, we change our facial expression, we change our body language. I mean, they pick up on absolutely everything. They know when they're hitting a nerve with us. And so the really big thing that every parent can go and do in advance of, during that time that you don't have contact with your kids, that's your opportunity to go off and really get healed. You can't heal your child's abuse. You can only heal how you are reacting to it. So what I find with parents is that there are there are nine big emotions that we tend to go through, especially when you have lost contact. So there's grief, and that's a particular type of loss, which is loss of the time you've already lost with your child. It's the time you're losing today, and it's the time you're losing that you anticipate you're going to lose tomorrow. So it's like an open-ended grief. It's a living bereavement, as described by many people. The second aspect is guilt, because most of us feel we could have and should have done more. In your example, should I have gone to court? Should I have not gone to court? What should I do? And by the way, most of the stuff that we do, it will be twisted against us by the alienator. So we're never going to be given the permission to do the right thing, but we always feel that we could have done more. The third one we feel is, and this applies particularly to women, is shame, that our child is not in our lives. And it applies particularly to women because the other women around in their social circles tend to be more judgmental than a man with a social circle of men. So the women around a woman tend to be more critical, and it makes them feel particularly shamed. And also, there is the societal expectation that women would have their children in their lives. It seems to be more acceptable than men don't. But
Yeah.
so shame's a big one. That leads to isolation, which is something I'm guessing that all of you have experienced, in that the people around you, including your family and friends, don't understand this. So you're kind of going on this journey by yourself. There's also powerlessness. The powerlessness you feel is, as I just alluded to, whatever you do is turned against you. You can't fix your kid. The attempts we make to rebuild relationships, a lot of the time that is shunned against us. If we buy a present for a kid, the alienating parent will say that we're bribing the kid. If we don't buy the present, the alienating parent will say we just abandoned them. So we're in a bit of a bind. That also leads us on to injustice, which I'm sure, again, everybody feels very strongly. How can this be happening? This is just wrong at every level. That leads us on to anger. And anger, everybody will have experienced. And then there's two others which are self-explanatory: anxiety and fear. And what happens, especially with the anxiety, is we create all these scenarios in our heads about what might be happening to our child. But that's just us creating scenarios which are normally driven by fear. And it's a conversation that our alienating other halves kick off in our mind. And what happens is whatever you're thinking will go into your subconscious. So if you start thinking about grief and guilt and injustice, your subconscious will take that and will say, "Thank you very much, Brian. I'll get back to you in a couple of hours." And a couple of hours later, a bit like a bereavement, this stuff comes in waves. You're suddenly thinking about grief and guilt and injustice again. So now it's in your head a second time. And because you're thinking about it a second time, it will automatically go into your subconscious a second time. So what I find with most parents is you're just looping. You're just going around and around and around. And the crazy thing is that conversation is started by the alienating parent, and it's a bit like a marathon. They ran the first 100 yards, then they gave you the baton, and you've been running with it ever since. So the person who's actually self-perpetuating the conversation is, you and me and everybody else here. So there's another aspect to this as well. All of those things, the grief, the guilt, the injustice, they are unique to you. That everybody will be feeling grief, but they're all feeling their own version of grief. And what you need to do is to start looking into what are the things that are actually coming up for me in grief. So what I do is I add another layer onto this to help people. So I talk about triggers, I talk about blockers, I talk about expectations. And the triggers are, what are the things that are just making me, unsettled, upset? And when it comes to things like grief and guilt, there will be things that trigger you that make you feel that way. And they're really helpful because what they're doing is they're starting to unpack this kind of complex mishmash of emotions that we're all feeling. And I describe it to people as a bowl of spaghetti. We have this kind of big mash of emotional response, which is your bowl of spaghetti. And what you want to do is you want to start picking the individual strands out so you can start looking at what each thing is. So each thing that's a trigger for each of you will help you to say, well, why am I having that particular feeling? So identifying all your triggers will give you a good inventory of the stuff you're still feeling uncomfortable about. Your blockers are what is stopping me from moving forwards in my healing. So normally blockers are to do with our reluctance to accept certain realities as they are today. And acceptance is not about giving up hope. Acceptance is just about dealing with the reality as it is now, but holding on to hope that things will change in the future, because they very often do. We just don't know when. And this is why it's so important to be prepared for it. Another thing that helps us is looking at expectations. So when our children are born, we all start creating expectations about the life that we think they're going to have going forward. And it's just and we have to remember, these are just ideas that we had in our head about what those lives are going to be like. And now we find ourselves in a situation where the expectations that we had for our kids and our role in their lives is now out of alignment with what's really happening in reality. So that causes us pain again. And so I'm just going to give you guys an example of how it is that our past experiences are so linked to these triggers, these blockers, and these expectations. So a lot of the things that trigger us are actually related to something that happened in the past that still makes us feel uncomfortable or unsafe. I use this word a lot, unsafe, because that's why we react poorly. So if we as children had an aloof parent, lots of us have had that experience. An aloof parent is not giving us the love and support that we deserve. So we end up having to work quite hard as kids to please that parent so that we get what we need. And guess what? We end up becoming people pleasers. It also undermines our confidence. It undermines our self-worth. It makes us more vulnerable to go off and then get married to somebody who is potentially an alienator in the future. And a lot of these people have got personality disorders but we tend to be quite empathetic. We tend to be nice people. We tend to look on the good side. We end up getting married to these people. And then 10 years, 12 years, 14, whatever, however many years later it is, our child gets alienated. And then the dynamic changes because when we're being rejected by our child, that reminds us subconsciously of this aloof parent who was, in effect, rejecting us. And now we've got our children doing it. So guess what? We start appeasing our children. When you look at your triggers and you look at your past, you'll start seeing links between your experiences in the past, and that's how you experience alienation today. So each of you have got your own unique pasts. And if you start unpicking what each one of those spaghetti pieces is, each one of those triggers, each one of those blockers, each one of those expectation mismatches, you will start finding that they relate back in a lot of instances to those past experiences. So you have to deal with those past experiences in order to change how you experience alienation in the current.
Sorry to hear all that, Brian. I can't believe it's been 7, 8 years by the sounds of things for it. It's a long time. I'm 18 months in. My daughter's 15 now. Yeah, one of the first things that you said early on, Charlie, was never say in your letters or messages that you miss them because it guilt trips them. I must say I've probably included that in every single thing that I've said. And the intention's not to guilt trip, it's just the case, trying to make them aware that I care and thinking about them and want to reconcile it. I've never really sort of seen it from that perspective, but
and by the way, Adam, everybody does it.
Yeah.
Because our common sense says if I don't tell my kids I'm missing them, then they won't realize that
I'm missing.
that I'm missing them and how important they are to me. But because they don't want to talk about alienation, because most of them don't actually want to admit that they're being effectively brainwashed and being held hostage by an alienating parent. When we say we miss them, they know we miss them, and they know that they're contributing deep down to the pain that we're experiencing. And this is why they alienating kids don't want to have this. They don't want to talk about it pretty much ever. And if they do, that's their choice. But I wouldn't try to encourage them into the conversation.
I mean, all the emotions, those 9 that you listed through, been through all of those, shame, guilt, grief, absolutely all of those. My own process for the first perhaps 6 months, I tried to just get on with my life, see it as a phase. This was going to blow over. Sent some messages, invites for holidays, festivals, all the rest of it. I was in a new relationship for a couple of years, and it was going well. Proposed, and within a couple of weeks, my ex had applied to the CMS for child maintenance. So, on top of losing a daughter.
Was this after you got into a new relationship?
So I've been in the relationship for 2 years, and then we'd got engaged, and within a couple of weeks, an application had gone to child maintenance.
Okay, that links in, and it's interesting for the benefit of everybody. Adam joined a couple of minutes earlier, and we were talking about how it's the same consistent patterns in the work that Adam does and parental alienation. It's the same stuff that comes up again and again and again. And so there are 5 big triggers for the alienators. The first one is, and I'm going to use this word unsafe again, because just kind of link in Brian's situation with what a lot of the alienators go through. What you went through, Brian, was quite a traumatic kind of upbringing with the experience that you had being alienated, but you survived it, and you've done very well. A lot of the people who are alienators have experienced trauma themselves in the past, and it tends to be either trauma or they've been very spoiled as children. But either way, it wasn't a normal childhood. And we see a lot, people use the word narcissism a little bit too frequently, but it's actually a really good yardstick to use when you're dealing with the alienators, because in so many instances, they demonstrate narcissistic tendencies. And this is because they've been nurtured to have this disorder. It's not because they were born with it. It's because they've gone through experiences themselves that they've never dealt with. And they've literally just got to the point the shutters have gone down, they've gone into protection mode, and they will throw other people under the bus in order to protect themselves. And we also see a lot of infantile behavior, childlike behavior, which is, they won't compromise, which is why we end up in court all the time, because they won't go through mediation. So you're dealing with very difficult, but basically insecure and vulnerable people who don't feel safe. So when you separate from that person, that is a massive trigger. So that's the first, the big five, is a massive trigger because it makes them feel hugely unsafe. Some of them recognize that the relationship is coming to an end and even get into a relationship before they're finished with us, because that's another mechanism of protecting themselves. But even if they do that, us leaving them is an enormous problem for them. The second one that we tend to find, anything to do with court. So going to court takes control out of their hands, puts it into the hands of somebody else, the lawyers and specifically the judge. They really don't like that. It makes them feel unsafe. Third one, money. The alienators are about money. We are about children and relationships. So they tend to hold on to things that the material, and basically their attitude is what's yours is mine, and what's mine is mine. And I just want you to I want you to kind of exit my life and my children's lives, and just crawl under a rock somewhere. But that's their approach. The fourth one, you get into a relationship with somebody else. So this is exactly what happened with you, Adam. You got into a relationship with somebody else. Your ex tolerated that. I'm sure she increased the well, I'm not sure, but I imagine she increased the alienation around that time anyway, that you started seeing somebody else, because she doesn't want you to be happy. But when you got engaged, that's now a firm commitment to that other person. So that then ties in with your CMS. And then the fifth one is when we start having a good relationship with our children. Because again, the alienators don't want that to happen. So we end up in this situation that we make one step forward in terms of progress with our kids. That is distressing for the alienator. So they make more effort to alienate the child to damage the relationship again. And we just, we can spend years, literally years, going with this backwards and forwards scenario.
Yeah, I think that it's absolutely on the money there. Pardon the pun, but yeah, the estrangement started within a few weeks of me talking to my daughter and saying, within a year or two, we'll perhaps think about moving house and moving in together and children. But we've been very careful and cautious to sort of slowly integrate with one another. So yeah, within a few weeks of that, Isabel left.
Yeah.
Zero contact with myself and my family. The next stage, like you say, was the firm commitment, and then the demand for maintenance payments. And something that I've noticed recently is that she has, I've got a very good relationship with my son. Still share the custody with her. He feeds back plenty to her, and I hear all sorts secondhand from him, which undoubtedly winds her up. So no, all those emotions are absolutely right. I have tried. I think one of the things that I've come to settle on to try to explain the frustration in the situation is that there's a lot we need to accept, an awful lot we don't agree with.
Yeah. I mean, personally, I had there is something called pre-alienation. Well, I call it pre-alienation. I haven't seen it kind of referenced elsewhere. I've kind of coined the term, so to speak. And this is the the beginnings or the foundations of alienation prior to the point in time we actually separate from our partners. So I personally experienced 10 years of that build-up of pre-alienation, undermining my character, basically accusing me of being mean, all sorts of things. And it meant that when I hit full alienation, which was for a period of 5 years, 2 years, no contact with one of my children, um, it was quite easy for my ex just to kind of dial it up a bit further and turn the children against me. But I'm now 10 years on from that, and even now, it's still important for me to be very alert to always giving love and support to my children, never getting caught up um, in basically not validating them. So what I mean by that is they can still say things. This is just to give you a sense of how long this can go on for, because not everybody's this far down the journey. But they can still say things to me right now, which is what they experienced in their mind. Now, even if that was a false memory, or even if that was something that I don't remember it that way at all, which is often the case, the best thing that I can do is just to let them talk about it and not to defend myself. Because it's back to what I was saying at the beginning. If you defend yourself, you're basically saying to your kid, I'm not validating your experience. What you're telling me is not true. And their reaction is, you're not healed because I'm trying to tell you. And so I'm going to disengage from you again. It's so subtle. So we have to go through a lot of acceptance on within ourselves if we want to help our kids. And I think
Hi,
that.
Charlie.
Hi,
It's
Kathy.
Kath. Hi, it's Kathy from New Jersey. Yeah, I'm just taking in everything that you are saying, and I would say about at least 3 years being alienated from my children, and this started in 2020 during the pandemic. Yeah, so I didn't get any help from law enforcement. Courts were closed. Nothing. He actually lied to the police as to why he has the children over. He just claimed that it was an argument between me and my daughter, who was 15 at the time, and that there was no court papers stating who has custody of the children. So because he lied to the police, they did not do anything. Plus, I think their age in the United States, in New Jersey at least, once they hit 14,
Yeah, voice of the
they
child.
they will not get involved.
Yeah. To be honest, if it were not for parental alienation, that would be quite a reasonable approach, because quite often, a child, it's valid for a child to have a perspective. Sometimes it goes much younger, like 12 to 13, but 14 is commonly applied around the world.
Okay.
Where they say, yeah, you're a young person. You're old enough to start making decisions about where you want to spend your time. And that plays into the alienator's hands completely, because what the courts don't take into account is the fact that they're being lied to. They're being lied to by the alienating parent. That parent is coercing and manipulating, our children. And then our children are pressurized into making false statements to a court, false affidavits. When I say false, affidavits are in favor of the alienating parent. And so kind of the courts have got their hands tied behind their back because of the system that is there in place today.
Right. And they didn't even speak to my kids, the courts,
Mm.
because both parents have to agree in allowing the courts to speak to the children. But I think because by the time he had my children for 2 years,
Yeah.
I did not want them to speak to my children, because at that point I felt they were too brainwashed into whatever it is that their father had to say.
Yeah.
Or what their teachings, whatever the teachings of what his father was doing, whether he was feeding into their needs, of they can do whatever they want to do, gift them luxury items because he makes more money than I do.
Another alienator weapon, money. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. And just pretty much allowing them to do whatever they want to do. No rules, no nothing. They can come and go as they please.
We
There's
see
just,
this. We see this a lot. It's the Wild West
okay.
as with regards rules, and most alienators have. So it tends to be on a spectrum. They're either insanely strict and kids aren't allowed to do anything, or it's the Wild West, but the alienator will step
Right.
in. They really want to control them.
And I think what it is he uses things like, I'll pay for your college. There's strings attached to it.
Always.
So, yep. So it's not just, given freely. It is with strings attached. Now my son, I am now going on like a year and a half with having zero contact. He is now 18. So the problem is both my kids are now aged out of the system.
Yeah.
And because they're aged out, I can't do anything through the court system at all, even though I have to responsibly pay the child support until they graduate out of college. But I'm not even, my rights were not taken away. But even though I ask for proof to see if my kids are in college as proof, since I'm paying the child support, that was recently rejected by the judge, which I don't understand why. I've asked for copies so that I know, are they really going to that college? But I think what my ex has done is he has blocked, since he has access, he pays for my son's phone. He's given my son his phone, and he knows if my son or my daughter are speaking to me and talking to me, because my messages always to my son for the past year and a half have been, it just says delivered. It doesn't say it's been read. It just says delivered. So I have no idea if he's getting them or not.
So one of the things that you can do is you can actually turn off the functionality that shows if you've read it or not.
Okay.
So it might be that they're genuinely not being read, or it might be that they are being read. It is also possible that, but it's unlikely that the number is still, running.
Right.
But it's not being used because that has an additional cost, and I don't think it could be that your ex is unlikely to do that. But this is very similar to with Brian above, who is also, and with so many parents, we send things out to our kids and it just seems to go into the void. But something that's so important for us is if our kids are reading it, that is like a lifeline for them. And the message to them is, I'm here, I care for you, I love you, I support you, and I'm available for the point in time that you're kind of ready to engage with me again. So I'd keep sending text. I'd do it if you have absolutely zero contact. I'd do it in a frequency of sort of once every 1 or even 2 weeks. And it's just to let them know that you're there.
Right. It feels so weird because I don't know if I'm talking to him or I'm not talking to him. It just feels so strange. And the thing is we had a very close relationship. And we went back into court. This was a year and a half ago, where the judge did order for me to start having dinners with my son. Because that was not in the original order once they switched over the parenting, because it's just a long situation of where he was really ordered to return my children. And the judge saw that what he was doing was alienated. She actually felt that what he had done was, almost like kidnap them. And that he had basically enmeshed himself with the children, that they knew everything what was going on, how much money he had spent getting an attorney, aligned everything up, that the kids and my eldest daughter actually got the text messages between her and my son, where my son said that he and his sister, Autumn, were not allowed to talk to me or see me until he wins the court order to have custody. And she handed over those text messages, which I used in my court. And the judge was like, yeah, no, you have totally enmeshed yourself with these children. There's no cause or reason to change households. It just sounds more to me like, the kids are a bit spoiled. They just, maybe don't like what mom's cooking for dinner, sometimes, or they just want things to have their way, or they don't want to do their chores.
What you're actually referring to in part here is a degree of I mean, again, this kind of part of the kid's experience, but adultification. So
Okay.
there's adultification or parentification is kind of the same thing. It's basically where the kids are being given information that is inappropriate. So information about the courts, information about finances, maybe
Yeah.
personal details about you. This is all stuff that our kids just shouldn't receive. They also they can also tend to be quite empowered by the um, alienating parent. This is the undermining of you to say, well, you don't need to pay attention to your mom's rules, and setting expectations
Yes.
that food you give them is not what they want. You don't have to go to bed when she tells you to. So even where we do have contact with our kids, and again, there's a kind of a spectrum of kind of mildly alienated, where the kids are being a little bit difficult, to moderately alienated, where they're being generally quite unruly. They can be calling us by our first name instead of calling us, mum or dad. They believe they have power over us because they've been given that power by the other parent. And then you have severely alienated, which is, all of those behaviors getting worse, but actually to the point of no contact. So for you, I mean, for you, Kathy, one of the things I'm guessing you're also having to struggle with is you're paying all the bills without seeing your kids.
Yeah.
And that is that's something that we all go through. Typically, we're the ones who are paying the bills. It's really important to keep paying for your kids, even though you don't see them. And sometimes this can really grate with us because it seems so unjust. But again, what the message is to our kids, I'm loving you, I'm supporting you, I'm caring for you.
Yes. And I do believe, that they are totally brainwashed into this. I do not believe that this is really by choice, because when I told my son I won the court order for us to be able to have dinner, he was looking forward to going to dinner with me. And he just said that he had to ask his dad, because I said, okay, so every Tuesday I'm going to pick you up at 6. Do you want me to get you from school, or do you want me to get you at your father's? And he goes, I will let you know. And then he wished me a happy Mother's Day, because we didn't get to see each other that Sunday. And I thanked him. And that moment on, I never heard from my son again.
So
that was the last time I heard from my son, was on Mother's Day.
Gosh, was that this year, Kathy?
No, this was last year.
That was last year. Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, I would take some comfort from the fact that he did want to see you, and he did want to wish you happy Mother's Day, and he was being a loving son at that point in time.
Yeah.
But for his father, it was too much for you to have, it was that fifth trigger. The idea of you rebuilding a relationship with your son was something that he wanted to try and kibosh straight away.
Yeah.
But you're also entering a point in time, with the kids being the ages that they are, because they're young adults now, that
Yes.
when our kids move into college, or if they go to university, very often they are out of the household. And they're still using the mobile phone, and parents, alienators have a great tendency to monitor what's going on in the phones. But it's they can start being more independent because they're not being so monitored. And
Right. And that's why, and that's why I hear from my daughter periodically, just once in a blue moon.
Okay,
She
good,
will
good.
actually reach out, which is very good.
Yeah,
Only through text, never by phone, hearing voice, each other's
yeah,
voice.
yeah. So
But
this is again, this happens all the time, and basically from your kid's perspective, what your daughter's trying to say is, Mum, I want a relationship, but just give me the time, give me the space. I have to do this in my own time because
okay,
where what we do is we're like kids in a toy shop. We've been fed on crumbs from our kids for so long that when something positive happens, that's when we're like the kid in the toy shop. It's like, oh, we're gonna have everything. It's all going to be back to normal,
yeah,
and we have to contain ourselves and just hold ourselves back a bit and just go at the pace that our kids are prepared to go at and be patient. So it's good to suggest, once in a while, once every months, even sometimes every 2 months, depends on how it's going with the kid. Would you like a call sometime? I wouldn't go straight to let's meet. I'd go text to call to meet and
right.
let them do it in their own pace. Because sometimes that can happen in months. Other
Mhm.
times it can take years. And
Right.
and the same advice applies to, as I mentioned with Brian and his kids. Expect your daughter and your son to be different people
Hmm.
when you do have the opportunity to have contact with them again, because
Okay.
a lot has changed in their life. But then
Hmm.
but then also do all the healing on you, because a classic example of one of the triggers is when our kids talk to us about some event that we weren't part of, or something they're doing currently that we're still not part of, or something they're planning to do with the alienating parent in the future.
Hmm.
And guess what? Those things get us, and unless we've really got ourselves mentally and emotionally resilient again, those things get us, and our kids pick up on them.
Yeah.
So this isn't a real opportunity for every parent who's
Hmm.
not having contact. This is your time to get yourself into a really good space.
And I've been working on that from the moment that he took the kids, pretty much
Good,
been speaking with a professional to
good.
deal with the grief, the heartache, the pain, the memories, that pop up,
Yeah.
holidays, all those things and for my own health and sanity and well-being, I had to really remove myself from everything that was going on.
Mm,
Um, instead of arguing or fighting on the social media groups, some of them, constantly talking and talking about it. I had to separate myself from all of that to heal because
you do.
you
Yeah.
get so wrapped up in everybody else's emotions on social media that, you
Yeah.
know, and you can't save everybody. You're just trying to save yourself.
I think social media is it's a double-edged sword. On the one hand, it's so helpful
Hmm.
to see to I mean, there are some great resources out there that can be insightful and supportive, give you hope. There are other places and other parents who are just caught in such a negative space,
Yes.
and they just bring everybody else down with them. And
Yes.
I advocate to parents, when you're on your healing journey, I would spend a lot less time on social media, because you don't want to be brought down by other people's issues.
Hmm. Totally agree. Yep.
Jump off
100%.
jump off the Titanic and save yourself.
Yep.
It's up to everybody else to save themselves as well.
Yes. I totally agree.
Charlie, I have a question. Can you hear me? My track is pretty much mirrors yours. Mine started in 2011.
Hmm.
I went, I met with Dr. Warshak. My son went through Family Bridges. I've met with Dr. Joshua Coleman. I mean, I've gone through everything. And unfortunately, my husband, I didn't know it at the time, was a narcissist, sociopath. And he brainwashed my son to hate me. And when he was 15, he took him from me. And I spent over 5 years and hundreds of thousands of dollars in court, the whole 9 yards, trying to get my son back. I did get, the judge did give me custody. Long story, but basically after he went through another program, he came back, he saw my ex-husband, and in 5 minutes he was re-alienated.
Yeah.
So he lived with my husband, and then after COVID, he moved back in with my husband, and I found out in August that he got his new girlfriend pregnant. I found out that he got married October 15th, and I have sent him cards and so forth, but no contact. He changed his phone number. And I did everything that, we've all done, sent the text, sent the presents, keep it in front of him. Yes, I did say, like Brian said, I miss you. I'll never do that again. But my question is now, is this baby, my granddaughter is due in January. And going to the social media aspect of this, my question is, do I reach out through social media now? Because I don't have a phone number. I know that they're both still living with my ex, who is sick.
When you say sick, you're talking about mentally or physically?
Mentally. He got into huge steroids. He looks like the Incredible Hulk. He's, scary, deranged, and but he has that narcissistic charm of pulling people in. So I mean, just need to know what to do to go forward.
The big challenge I think you have is and it kind of comes back to what most people go through. When the kids are still in contact with that alienating parent, it's very difficult for them to break free, even when they're adults. When
He's 6 years old.
Yeah, and you would think that they can break free, but the enmeshment is so strong that it's still very hard for them. That basically they're still afraid of the alienating parent.
And they're basically one person. At one point, one of them came into the house and said something about the dog. 5 minutes later, the next person came in, the father, and said the exact same thing.
Yeah, you hear this parroting going on. I would try and reach out on social media. I would also think about sending them a letter.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it could.
I did send an engagement card wishing them, a happy life together. Well, now they're married, so I have a wedding card to send. But here I have a granddaughter that's going to be born. I want to be part of her life.
I would send everything as you would, but then beyond that, you just have to hope and wait that things will change.
Okay.
And again, this is why it's so important that we work on our own healing, because
I've done everything.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes we just have to deal with. This is the what I was referring to as blockers. It's the not wanting to accept the reality of kind of where we're at right now, but it's just where we're at right now.
I even started EMDR therapy, hoping that would help. I mean,
did it help?
I'm still in the throes of it.
Yeah.
Oh dear. Okay, so I know that you and I have an appointment to spend some time together alone, but I just really wanted to let other people out there know this is a long journey.
Yeah.
And it sucks.
Yeah.
I think that's a really important point, Dawn, and apologies, I will need to close this session in a moment. But that is such an important point, because it is a long journey, but it's also about us learning how to give ourselves permission to get on with our lives again, and be happy and be okay with the fact that we are enjoying and having a fulfilling life, because the alienators want us to be sad and miserable. It's back to that thing, that looping conversation going on in our head. They want us to be sad and miserable, and when we are sad and miserable, we're doing their job for them.
Yes.
Geez, how easy are we making it for them? But we find it really hard, typically because of the guilt we find it really hard to say it is okay for me to get on with my life again. And you absolutely, everybody here and every alienated parent should absolutely get on with their lives. Fight for your kids, do everything you can, but also be kind to yourself. Everybody here is a great parent. They are a lovely person, and we don't spend enough time reminding ourselves of that. And because we're empaths, we beat the holy hell out of ourselves every single day.
Right. Who needs an alienator? We beat ourselves up.
Yeah. We're really good at that job. And again, that's part of our healing process, is learning how to love ourselves once more. And remember that the biggest mistake we made was actually marrying the person who's created all this carnage.
Yes.
100%.
Yeah. I mean, it's
Charlie, thank you for doing this. It's so helpful.
an absolute pleasure. So just to answer your question in the chat, Brian, who can help with this kind of healing? That would be me. I spend every day of the week helping parents to reframe the way that you're experiencing alienation, understand why you are having the experience that you are, and helping you to address these insecurities and these vulnerabilities from the past. And I'm doing little thing which I showed. This is guilt. This is grief. These are all insecurities and vulnerabilities. This is your grief. This is guilt. This is everything else. That's the conversation that's looping around. You want to shut that stuff down. You need to know what that stuff looks like, which is the pieces of spaghetti. Once you know what that spaghetti looks like, you can start dealing on them piece by piece. You have to shut that down, but you have to put something else in. And the something else is where do you want to go? Because we don't spend enough time thinking forwards. And the way you want to go is, who is the version of me I want to create going forwards? Not this one, but who is the version of me I want that's going to be living my life more fully and doing the things I want to do? Who is the version of me I want to be for my child? And if you've got more than one child, who is the version you want to be for each of those children? Because each of them have different needs from you. If you've got a relationship with somebody else, who is the version of me I need to be for my partner to help them through their experience of parental alienation? And there's a fifth one, which is, who is the version of me I need to be for my family to support them through this process? So there's a lot of stuff in the future for you to focus on that will help you to take your attention off what you're experiencing right now and to start moving in a far more positive way again. Anyway, that's what I help parents with all the time. Guys, thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate that. And all these questions are so helpful because, as you will have noticed, you're all going through the same stuff.
Yep.
And any question, as I said at the beginning, any question that you ask me tonight will be relevant to a huge number of people. So it's really helpful for other parents to see this. I will be running other sessions, so you will have other opportunities to ask more questions of me. If you want to reach out to me directly as well, or think about coaching, whatever, please let me know. You'll find me on Facebook and Instagram. And at some point in time, I'm lining up a session like this, probably in the new year, with 2 alienated kids who've got through it to come and get their perspective and answer your questions as well. So you can hear it from the horse's mouth.
Awesome. Very good. Thank you so much, Charlie. You're such a great help and very inspirational. You really are.
Well, thank you guys.